Hello.
What's up? What's up?
How are you doing today?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. I was just wondering if you had a moment to talk about liberty.
Absolutely. Always got time to talk about liberty.
But before we get into that, you have been making the rounds, going to Southern California, Middle Central Valley, California, and the coast, and the Bay Area, San Leandro, and you're talking about the recall petition. But you were doing this months ago.
Oh, yeah.
What does it mean to you that, and how were you treated months ago versus now that liberal newspapers like the Times and Washington Post are seeming to repeat what you were talking about months ago?
Well, it's a matter of reading the room. And as a longtime activist, I've been pounding the pavement for damn near 10 years now. So, um, like I said, just kind of hearing the buzz and the grumbles in the streets, it echoed that a lot of people were growing upset. And this was before the lockdown. That's why there were two attempts to recall the governor, or even more. It was just multiple petitions circulating to recall him for various reasons. And that's what led to their downfall because they weren't able to gather enough signatures to actually make it happen. But this time it's a united effort, and you have over 5,000 people involved in it as well. But um, just seeing kind of like the downfall of the state, especially when it came to mismanagement of public funds, our taxes. Having Gavin Newsom establish new government agencies, using that money, those funds to do that instead of improving our roads like he promised to, or build the high-speed rail that we continue to be taxed for without seeing any type of result, or helping the homeless, another $1 billion project or promise that he offered to do and campaigned on, but yet we haven't seen any results. So
So you're saying that you noticed the pattern early on,
right.
and that's why you were behind the recall petition. What I'd like to zero in on is that this is the third recall petition, and you were very energetic and very behind it and thoroughly believed in it. And it was the third attempt. And I remember you saying many times that people who were involved in the first two were kind of, petering out. They weren't as enthusiastic. And here you are, the third time, the third attempt, and you're going, no, this is it. This is the time. And it seemed as though that was an outrageous statement. But you made that months ago, and now the New York Times and the Washington Post are saying the same thing. What did you see, and what does it mean to you that months ago you saw something, and now major publications are going, "Yo, yeah, that's right." How come they didn't see it months ago? Why did you?
They made it a partisan issue. And while I was out there at the protests, actually being involved with the people that wanted to reopen the state, that were against the lockdowns, against having their business shut down, their kids not being able to go to school, they were of all walks of life, and they tried to pit it in the mainstream media as it being, a right wing, privileged white American, type of demand, when it certainly was not. I was out there, number one, among many people, like I said, from all walks of life. These were rich people, poor people. These were people that were hardworking class, people that were poor, and just doing the best that they could to kind of survive during this time when our government isn't providing any support whatsoever. So they were out there protesting, and because of the media's influence, you started to see a shift. I saw that happen as well, to where more Trump supporters were getting involved, and that it kind of became the new face of the recall protest. But as I said to you before, when it first started, there were people, and are still people out there that are Republican, Democrat, rich, poor, conservative, liberal, whatever the case may be. They're out there wanting to get on with their lives as they did before all of this happened. So, um, just in kind of seeing that demand, I could tell that it was more of a nonpartisan issue, and it didn't have to do with politics at all. It had to do with we the people and what we wanted of our government. So right now you have a lot of, I guess, conservative groups out there supporting the recall, but the Libertarian Party is also involved in it. They're pretty much the middleman party. But they've been involved in it. I've been involved in it as a libertarian, and I going out to districts that were considered to be liberal or dominated by Democrats, a Democratic district, and have had tons of people sign on to the petition as well in those areas. So it's pretty much everywhere, anywhere that you can go in California, and people are excited to sign the recall petition because that's what they want. And it's just a shame that the media is perpetuating it as if it's a left-right, right-wing, left-wing, Republican, Democrat issue, because it certainly is the furthest thing from that, from my experience.
So you're saying that it was obvious that Californians were interested in this idea, and it'd be obvious to anyone if they were looking, but the media was intentionally not covering this thing. And the only reason that you saw it was you're out there in the public,
right,
routinely. And so most people rely on someone else to tell them what's going on. You're actually on the front lines meeting, and you go, this is happening. Mm-hmm. And so you knew something was happening because you're actually meeting the public, and the media was saying, we're not going to cover this. But you were able to get the information independently.
Exactly.
Okay. Are you surprised that it seems to now become public knowledge, or was this inevitable, or do you think that they could have kept it tamped down for a while? Maybe Newsom never got backlash.
Oh, it was definitely inevitable. It was bound to happen, and that's what I'm saying was when you kind of can see trouble brewing and just see it bubbling to the surface, at some point it's going to spill over, it's going to erupt. And I think we started to see that over the summer, and of course with the George Floyd protests, but even before that, with the homeless situation and the people losing their jobs, because of them not being able to work as an independent contractor. That was just really starting to take an effect on the working class people of California before the lockdowns started to play a role in it all. But and just seeing that growing concern and that demand, it was bound to happen at some point. It's just wonderful now that people are, I guess, because of what he's doing, to go out there and contradict the same rules that he's imposing upon us. And those stories, those reports are getting more publicity, and it's shedding light on the recall efforts. And it's exciting people even more to want to sign the recall because of what him and Nancy Pelosi and Mayor London Breed and all of these other elected officials are out there doing. They're imposing rules that are ruining people's livelihood altogether, whether they're not being able to work or not being able to send their kids to school, but yet they're doing the same thing. They're going out, having dinner indoors and in restaurants, but shutting down or fining other businesses for doing exactly the same thing. So it's extremely contradictory, and people aren't stupid. They take them for granted, and they think that they're just going to blindly listen to them and obey. and think that they'll just take their word for face value, you know? And the people aren't like that. They're questioning their authority. They're paying attention to what they're doing, and they don't appreciate it, you know? And if they aren't going to listen to them face to face or by however other means, then they're going to raise their voices, one, by signing on to this petition to recall them, you know, and give everybody else a chance in the state to get involved in it as well, because it's step by step. First step is for us to collect the signatures needed so everybody in the state can have a chance to vote on it. And that's why more people are motivated than ever, because they feel like if we the people actually had a chance to vote on it, the majority of us would vote to recall him. So he's sweating bullets right now because that number is picking up, opposed to before, like I said, where they didn't meet the signature requirement. This one is almost at 1 million. We need 1.5 million just to make it stick and get this ball rolling here. So with the recall effort being very serious this time around, it looks as if it's going to be successful, in which case you'll see another recall election happening here in the state of California soon, of another Democratic governor. It would be the two in the history, entire history.
Well, you have been making the rounds across California and meeting different people. We've been talking about that. Many people have been asking questions, and as you know, the internet is not always a source of accurate information. So what I was hoping is, if you're willing to, would you be able to talk us through the life story that led you to this, with most of the boring details, simply so that people can watch this video rather than relying on rumors or, my favorite, certain websites that everybody goes to for information, but can easily get hacked. They can trash your name based upon bad info. So let's start with,
Sure.
Where were you born and where did you spend the first year of your life?
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was born to my mother, of course, Patricia, and my father, Brian, or Nick, as he calls himself. And my parents divorced at a young age, so my father raised me first, and then my mother towards the end, I guess, like ending years up to high school, you know, ending teenage years. So yeah, it was a unique, I guess, growing up as a child, because again, I was raised by my father, and he was very strict, abusive even. You know, he had tendencies about himself, but we've since reconciled that, and he's in my life now. But he was in the military and is a military veteran, and raised me in that strict type of household. So I was no stranger to discipline, I'll just say that. So my mother ended up having custody of me from 9 till 18 or so, or when I was done with high school. And she was a single mother on welfare, you know, raising 4 kids, because right when I moved with her, she had my little sister. So I have 2 older siblings, a brother and a sister, and me, middle child, and then my little sister. So when it came to, you know, Christmases and birthdays and that sort of thing, my mother did her best that she could to provide for us. But, you know, with a limited income, that's all she had available to her. But, of course, growing up you start to look at your environment and, you question why the things are the way that they are. And you have to look at the human condition, who we are as people, and our certain behavioral patterns. And if you're the type of person that wants more and desires more, then you'll do more, And I was that type of person where I wanted more from what I was being provided in life by my mother. So I started working as soon as I could, which was legally around 14 when I obtained my first worker's permit. And, I had a maintenance job, mopping floors and cleaning bathrooms and cleaning toilets, So that was my first job, working actually at a nursing home. So we had accidents, in the elevator and stairwell and all sorts of stuff that we had to clean up. But my first job, like I said, was very laborious. So
You petitioned to be able to work? You had to go and make an effort to be able to get a permit to work?
Yeah, that's how it is. If you want to work, you have to obtain a worker's permit. I believe the legal age is 14. So once I got my worker's permit, and of course, I had to ask my mother, and I told her I want to have other stuff, other clothes, and yeah, my bad. And I collect comic books. I wanted to be able to buy all the comic books that I wanted to, without it putting a dent in her pocket, and not being told no. And that's what I was told by her: go out and work. So that's exactly what I did. And I got signed off for the work permit, started working, got my first paycheck, and I'm looking at it like, why am I paying taxes? That was my first introduction to taxes at 14. Because I'm like, I did all of that hard work, and all of a sudden I have to pay an income tax, And I'm like, how is that even possible? Why is that acceptable that the government takes it? And I remember asking this to my employer, the boss that's giving us out the paychecks. And he said, taxes is what everybody pays, And I just didn't understand it. And it was upsetting that people allowed us to be robbed, in a sense, because at such a young age, that's how you see it. Somebody taking out of your paycheck before you even had an opportunity to say where it goes, how much you can take, and if it's even okay. I may have needed it all, and I wasn't even given the opportunity to take it all home and contribute to society, I guess, if I chose to. But just to have it taken away from me without explanation didn't suffice to me. So I was always the type to question government, and I used to watch TV shows like 2020 and Primetime Live, and when they did investigations about George Bush, Papa Bush, and Bill Clinton and the CIA, and coke being distributed to black neighborhoods. But yeah, it's just crazy about how much information comes to light once you start digging. And like I said, I was always the inquisitive type. And after high school, I ended up moving to California. I was very involved in music. That was another one of my escapes, I guess. And I wanted to be able to purchase music equipment. So going out there working, that's another thing that I did. And that hobby started to become something where I was promoted to, show And I would say at around 14, 15, I started going out and doing what is it, like local showcases and stuff like that, local talent shows. And I started writing first. I was in the drama club in middle school, and that was another thing that turned my direction away from all of the other things that's happening in the hood, shootings and gang violence and drug dealings and all of this other stuff. You have another outlet, and if you can turn your attention to it, then it'll help shape you and mold you. And so when I got into theater, I realized that I really liked acting and performing in front of crowds. And I turned that into my own talent to be a musician. And so I started writing music and performing it publicly, and gained a name around town as a rapper named Cue Ball. And I started to run into other people that were very involved in the music scene and helping develop local talent. And they have recording studios, and they recorded some early material for me that I started to shop around town. And I would say around 16, I had an album that I was pushing into local stores. And with me being in high school and being one of those troubled teenagers, being frustrated over, I guess the trials and tribulations of life growing up, because I got to see all of that at an early age, how I felt to be an adult, because I pretty much provided for myself living under my mother's household, and that caused rifts between us as well. So I was just very independent minded and wanted to break away. So I was in school having problems, was damn near threatened with expulsion. And the military recruiter came through the hallways, and I pretty much took them up on their offer. I'm like, hey, what is this good deal that you're telling me about? And he's like, well, you could pay for college and, get all of these medical benefits and have a house and all of this stuff. He's just painting a pretty picture of the American dream to me. And I was sold, and I signed up for the Marine Corps. I went through the physical test. I did the ASVAB. So ended up taking that test. Thank you very much. Passed both with flying colors, but because I smoked, I ended up failing the drug test. And the recruiter was like, hey, we'll just test you again in 6 months. You stay clean, don't smoke weed, and we'll test you again. And I'm like, okay, let's do this, But when they signed me up, I told them I wanted to get into infantry. I wanted to harm people. And he was excited to sign me up just under that. And like I said, when you're troubled and looking for an outlet, it's sad that people can get motivated to sign up for the military to hurt other people, and our government supports that. At 17, 17 years old, I would have been 18 in the summer. So that's why the 16 months or 6 months was important, because the 6 months would have been time for me to stop smoking weed, at which point I'd now be 18 and, I can go off to basic training. So during that time, it was around the holidays, and I had a relative that lived in California, and he came to visit, and he heard my music and saw what I was doing locally. And I think we even had a talent show, and he came. But he's like, hey, I know a lot of musicians out in California, friends of mine, and I can introduce you to them and help you support your music career. So then I had my two choices on the table. Either I could go into the Marine Corps, and who God knows what happens. Because most likely, I'm pretty sure I would have ended up going to war. As a matter of fact, a few years later was 9/11, and who did they send in first? The Marines. So, yeah, knowing that I probably would have been 3 years into the Marine Corps, I most likely would have been involved in that some way. But I could have faced that reality, or, the one that seemed undetermined, which was going to California and pursuing a career in music. And I chose that one. So after high school, I moved to California at 17 years of age. 10 days after high school, moved out here. And I've been out here ever since. So, yeah, first few years, I was here with my cousin. We toured around town, knocked on some doors and shook some hands and all of this good stuff, recorded more music. And I made a pretty good name for myself as an underground musician here in California. And was courted by a few major labels, but I know how to read. And one of the first things my cousin had me do when I moved out here to pursue music at 17 was read books on the music industry, the music business, because people forget it's a business. And he was like, I don't want you to be stupid, so you're going to read these books. And no, it's a business that you get into. You got the music part. Now you got to know the business part. So once I started learning about that and royalties and percentages and how it worked and just even getting an advancement, for a record deal, different types of record deals. So I learned all of this. And once these, record labels started to court me and they give me the contract and I'd read them, I'm like, nope. I can't sell out on, creative control, all sorts of things you sign off on when you sign a major record label contract. And this was, around 99, 2000, So I ran into a few local acts that were wanting to create their own independent label. And they had a lot of money involved too. So I started to work with them. And my record producer at that time, he said, hey, well, if you're not going to work with the record label, why don't you just, release music independently? So that's what I started to work with them on doing, and got my music in movies like Scary Movie 4. I was able to have my one of the first artists to have my music digitally released. So I'm one of the first artists that was on Pandora, iTunes, Spotify, all of these digital radio stations or digital music outlets that are now household names, but back then they were risky business because you had the music industry that was scared of having music be available online. And one of the things I heard of was this fight between record labels and this website called Napster. Ever heard of that? Napster was one of the first online, music stations where you could rip your music and make it available to all of your friends and family and anybody online. And the record labels hated that because they weren't getting paid from it. And it's all about money. So, but yet at the same time, I'm looking at it as a great avenue because I put my music on Napster and more people started to download my music and learn who I was. So I got to do what the record labels were doing for free. So that's another way that, I guess the trend is now to where every artist comes out on TikTok or YouTube or, whatever social media platform is best shit. Um, and they can make a career from it to where back then when that was something that was frowned upon. So to where now it's like the standard. So just seeing the trend of things, signed up for these, digital distribution companies, and um, like I said, was able to make more of a name for myself
What
through
was your
music.
name?
Cue ball.
It was Cue Ball?
Yes.
And that's
Q, like the letter Queen. And then ball, like a basketball.
And that would be your name on Spotify, Napster, and the movie.
Yeah.
You'd be listed as Cue Ball.
Yes, exactly.
What was the name of your song on Scary Movie 4?
It was a song from my album called What's This? So my first album was called The Real, and the song is called What's This? And they do parodies in the movie, so it's like during the parody of $1 Million Baby or Hustle and Flow. It's all like going on at once, but my music is in that scene. But
can you rap one line?
Nope.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Moving on. Had to try.
Gotta put music somewhat behind me because with the Napster thing, and that turned my attention towards politics and music. You know what I mean? And how the two played a role together. And just knowing that the same type of people. Oh, and then you learn who owns the music companies. Sony and Seagram's and Universal Pictures owns Universal Music Group. And, you learn all of these things and connecting the dots as far as them wanting to have universal control. And if you got 5 companies running all of the major labels out there, then they get to control the type of content that these record labels are putting out. And that was my problem with the record labels was I wanted to be in control of my content. They wanted to change my content. They have these people called A&Rs, artists and repertoires or whatever, but their job mainly is to dictate, no problem, is to dictate the type of music that the artist creates for the record label's liking. So you have a lot of artists who just do as they're told or hoping that they get to the level to where they won't have to listen to them and they can tell them what to do. But like I said, this was a change, evolution in the record labels that I'm seeing happen. And I stepped out of that before it happened and kind of just did my own thing. So put videos up on YouTube, started to do more shows, all of this other stuff. But it had more of a political tone because I wanted to expose these things that I was seeing through my music. And I just saw the development of myself out of my music, and it was starting to reflect my day-to-day life, what I was dealing with, It was no longer about, I guess, fantasies or storytelling or that sort of a thing, but it was more so just an expression of my day-to-day life and what I saw happening in the community. The new community that I'm in versus the one I used to be in. And like I said, this was early 2000s. So then when 9/11 happened, that opened my eyes even further because I remember being there and watching that shit on the news. Now, a lot of people can't say that, especially the millennials, the younger millennials or the zennials or whatever the hell. So, anybody that's been out of the loop over the past 20 years didn't see it on videotape. They saw it with their own eyes. So I saw it with my own eyes, and I remember watching the two buildings fall. I remember watching, them talking to firefighters on the streets and them saying that they're hearing explosions. I remember watching a third building fall and all of them falling pancake style, like demolitions. And I'm watching this and I'm like, this shit is rigged. I just knew it out the gate. I'm like, this shit is rigged. And I took that questioning and ran with it. And I just ran into documentary after documentary that kept exposing all of this proof. Talking about thermite and people owning, insurance policies to buildings and where the mayor's office was. And yeah, and of course, Building 7, that third building on 9/11 that fell. So yeah, just going out on social media now. Facebook is young. And a lot of people on Facebook is talking about 9/11 now. And ended up stumbling upon Anonymous, and then I guess exposing certain things in government. And it was just a very pivotal time in my life because it seemed like it was just like a wave of information that kind of overwhelmed me. So I was into a lot of documentaries, a lot of books, and I just consumed so much information to where I got to this point where I was like, we really have to do something physically to change our environment on a political scale. Like the same type of coups that our government pay for in other countries, we needed that here in America. I was so anti-government where I wanted on board with anybody that was ready to do that. You know what I mean? And it's crazy because I still was sold into the political system to where when Obama came on the scene, I'm like, I'm hearing things about him in the hood where they're talking about, oh, he's the truth and, he's an activist out there, organizer out in Chicago. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm hearing his name and I'm hearing this from people from the Nation of Islam. You know what I mean? So when they're telling me that he's legit and I go to find out more about him, I'm like, okay, I give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's not sold out. We'll see, And one of the things that he campaigned on was getting Wall Street out of politics, which is big when you know about the banking industry, the banking cartels, just how the monetary system works in our country altogether. It's a controlled system, and there's few benefactors of it. We, the people, are not. We're being indebted because of it. And when you learn that our government borrows money from the Federal Reserve and uses us as collateral, as working class taxpayers, because that's the collateral. You keep working to pay taxes to pay off this debt that they keep borrowing. And this is what they operate on. So Republican, Democrat, whenever they talk about a spending bill, that's where they're getting the money from, the Federal Reserve, which is in return using you to pay off that debt. So the national debt is proof of it. Now, what, $26 trillion and counting, And when you're learning this stuff, just paying attention to basic politics, you should know that at some point, that money is going to get to the amount to where whoever we owe, this bank, the banking system, is going to say, you owe us. How are you going to be able to pay off that debt? And if your property is signed over to them, whether it's your house, your car, since, you're taking loans out to purchase these items, then you're turning over the ownership to the banks. And it's on a promissory note. And then you refinance and you continue to borrow and, for extravagances and luxuries. So it's a shame. So seeing this happen, hearing him say that, Obama. I'm like, yeah, Obama. I'm like, this is a big feat. You really got to show me. He gets into office and he takes a check from Goldman Sachs. You can look it up. Took a $500,000 payment like a month into into him being elected president. And another thing he does is he bails out the banks, because this was the time during the recession and the banks were exposed for having, given fraudulent loans, criminal loans, predatory loans to people who could not afford them. And this caused the housing crisis. This caused the student loan bubble to swell more to where it is now. And that's why you had Sallie Mae and Freddie Mac supposedly go out of business. But they really got bailed out by the government and repackaged their branding. Now they're Navient in Great Lakes, two of the nation's largest lenders for student loans. And they're doing the same thing they were doing back then. And Obama gave them taxpayers' money, because when you learn about it, taxpayers' money, you bailed out the banks. When Business 101 is you get in business to be risky. I put so much money into me being a musician, thousands that I worked hard for to just do a showcase or, get my name out there. It's a risk. If I'm going to be successful, it's because how much I invest into myself. So if I'm asking somebody else to bail me out of the situation, then I'm going to be beholden to them, like the record labels. If I would have took an advancement from them, here, let's give you $1 million and you go out there and you keep doing what you've been doing and you sell records. But remember, you owe us that $1 million. Okay, sure. But you also owe us how much ever we spend on advertising, on music videos, on, hospitality costs. All of these charges add up. So you end up owing $1 million plus, and until you recuperate and can pay off that debt, you don't start making a dime. Same way works with business. And if you take a risk as a business, you can't go taking a loan from the bank, because until you can pay back that debt you owe the bank, you aren't making any money. So if you want to make a profit, then you go out there and you use your own money to support your own business. And that's exactly what banks should be reliable to do. Should have let them fail, and if they got millions, billions, trillions to spend on salaries, CEO salaries, then they got enough money to bail themselves out. But instead, bailed them out. And to me, that was the ultimate, sellout. And before Alex Jones went too far right, I used to watch his videos. And one of them he made, a video, was called The Obama Deception. Check this shit out. So you watch The Obama Deception, end up connecting the same people that were connected to Bush, that were connected to Clinton and every other, presidential regime before him, because that's what they are. Um, they were all behind Obama, you know. Um, so you end up finding out he's another puppet having his strings pulled. What are you going to do about it? You going to continue to stand behind him and stand by him? No, I can't do that. I don't give a damn if he is supposedly black. So, yeah, had to shift away from that. And at this time, I'm just like, fuck the government. They really got to be overthrown. And ended up looking into other political parties. And other political parties were talking about this. The Libertarian Party. And I heard about their candidate, Ron Paul, who ran against Obama during the 2008 election. Didn't even hear about his name at all, which alarmed me again, because I'm like, why are they only forcing us to choose between the Republican and Democrat when I could have heard about this Ron Paul guy and I would have voted for him happily? I probably would have been out there like, no, unless Obama talking about what Ron Paul is talking about, you shouldn't be voting for him. So, hearing this message for the 2008 presidential election turned me on to the Libertarian Party and the message of libertarianism. Started to learn more about it, and I just saw that more so as being a place where I was happier politically when it came to political ideas and what type of government we want to have serving us. And I don't think people really look at government as doing that, serving us, because it doesn't. Whatever issue it is, whatever problem that we can blame government for, they're not solving it because they don't serve us. And when it boils down to that, that's what we start to argue. So where can we find a solution for that? In libertarianism. So I started to pretty much advocate for Ron Paul, listen to more of his speeches. And in one of them, I heard him say, if you want to get involved in politics, this is the way to change things. If you really want to see a different government that reflects what you want out of your community, get involved on every level, on the local level. If you're going to run for city council or assembly or auditor, whatever the case may be, comptroller, all of these different positions. Some of them go unopposed. Senators run for office unopposed. And if you can run for any political office just to get your name out there, to let them know that I'm willing to throw my name in the hat to upset status quo, then that's going to put pressure on them to start paying attention to what we the people really want, especially if that candidate can become popular enough to gain status in an executive position like mayor or governor. So I started to look at the failures of the state of California, getting taxed for a train going to nowhere. And this was all by Jerry Brown at this time. So watched the downfall of Gray Davis. I'm excited about the people of California because I'm like, wow, they took out, somebody who I guess was seen as doing a good job, and he's a Democrat in the supposed liberal state. And they fired his ass, got him out of there with the recall. And next thing you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger is elected governor. And it just went through this kind of like empty period in the state where you didn't even know what the hell he was doing. None of the policy changes he, I guess, supposedly put in place really made the life for people in California got better, because you still saw the downturn on the streets. nothing is getting better on my level, what I can see in my community, in my neighborhood, in my surroundings. So until you can affect things at that level, I know you're not doing shit, you know? So I'm looking at Gray Davis, Schwarzenegger, now Jerry Brown, and hearing this message from Ron Paul to get involved in politics. And I'm like, you know what? Whatever happens in the state, it boils down to who's in charge, who's the leader, you know? Because they're the ones that need to be held responsible. We did it to Gray Davis. We should do it with Schwarzenegger. We should do it with Jerry Brown, you know? And I remember him saying about, you know, people, him running unopposed and, or candidates running unopposed and giving them a run for their money. So I'm like, hell, I might as well throw my, my name in the ring. Shit, says, you know, everybody is running for governor in the state of California. So 2014 was my first time running for governor of California. And I was out there involved in the Occupy Wall Street protests, watching this happen, all under Jerry Brown's watch. Yeah, so or who was in office? I think it was probably even Schwarzenegger. I'm not sure if it was him or Jerry Brown, but I know Jerry Brown was running for governor in 2014. And no, he was the governor. Yeah, he was. So I ran against him because he earned a third term. They ended up changing the book somehow to where he ran for a third term, and that's where he ended up staying in office for a third term in 2014. So he people elected him, and I wanted to get involved in the Libertarian Party because I saw that they had the Republican candidate, Jerry Brown, of course, for the Democrats, but there was no Libertarian candidate for governor that year. And I contacted them like, hey, you know, why didn't you guys run any candidate? And they were like, well, you know, no one ran. And I'm like, well, I'll get involved with the Libertarian Party because I like you guys. You know what I'm saying? I didn't like the fact that you were supporting or not supporting labeling of genetically modified foods. But, you know, other than that, I can agree with everything else on the platform. And so I started to get involved in the Libertarian Party. Actually had to wiggle my way into that also. Kick down some doors and stick my head in some rooms, but I ended up making it happen to where in 2018 I was their endorsed candidate for governor. And that was an interesting journey because, like I said, I kind of had to earn my keep with a whole bunch of strangers. And they're looking at me like, oh, you want to run for the number one office in the state on our party ticket? You know, what makes you qualified? A lot of people ask that out the gate. And as much as I felt like activism was enough or should be enough to people who claim to be activists themselves, it wasn't, you know. It still was a litmus test that what I feel like the voting majority is. You know, they want to see that you have proven yourself as a community leader first before you step up to such a position. Even though Arnold Schwarzenegger had no political experience whatsoever, he was an actor. And we happily gave him the number one position in the entire state of California. You know, here's the keys. Just threw it at him. You know, you're the Terminator. Handle it. And yeah, just expecting things to get better. Jerry Brown, again, his third time running for governor. And, you know, the 2 times before that, did he ever prove that he was even, you know, deserving of a third term? No. But people happily threw him the keys because they felt safe with him because he was a career politician. So it's like people lean on these these inconsistencies of character, but yet at the same time want to criticize them for them. So it's like, what do you want? You know what I mean? So thankfully, I gained favor with a lot of people in the Libertarian Party that saw activism as being credible when it comes to fighting to be a spokesman for we the people and a representative. And they were behind me 100%, to where when I was given the nomination, it was pretty much unanimous. It was a unanimous endorsement by all of the members of the Libertarian Party at that time. But there were a few involved that also wanted to bend the rules and accommodate my opponent, who was running against me for governor for the Libertarian Party. And he was seen as being more so of a model of what they were looking for, because he was a lecturer and a National Geographic photographer and all of this other stuff. Had a resume that was more impressive and on paper. And that's what it boiled down to, was him just being a on paper person. Because when it came to debates, I definitely outshined. And when it came to community activism, I outshined him there as well. So, and that's where I feel like the members involved saw my efforts as being more genuine, more authentic, opposed to him just feeling as if he should just be handed it to him. And these few members of the Libertarian Party that broke rank to split the endorsement between me and this other candidate made it the first time in history the party has ever done that, where they've endorsed two candidates for governor, for any position other than that matter, especially when it comes to a single seat office. So I could tell that there were a few things at play. Politics, prejudice, of course, on many levels. Like I said, not just my level of accomplishments as a person, but skin color, also play a role. Perception is everything. I was told by some members that I should cut my hair, This was suggested to me then. If you clean up, and look more presentable, that should make you more approachable, and people will be more welcoming of you and want to vote for you. So, as much as I was resistant to it, they were telling me the truth. And I can't deny it, especially when you're speaking to multiple people. And I wasn't attached to my hair. The main reason why I more so started to grow it was because when I met my wife, I used to wear my hair like this and shave it off all of the time. And she asked me after we got married, why don't you grow your hair? So I started to grow my hair for the next few years. That's why you'll see the evolution in looking at any of my previous videos or interviews or pictures, whatever the case. But now I'm back to square one, as you can see. But yeah, and just seeing this happen with the Libertarian Party, and a lot of things within it as well, as far as them being organized to the level of where they want to create the foundation for candidate support, just like any of the other major parties. They're still in the development stages, and it goes through a transitional phase when I was looking for that to be more structured. I was depending on that as a candidate because I needed that. I noticed that's what I didn't have and the first time I ran for governor. So I'm like, of course, I need that body to help outfit me to get me prepared for this position, you know?
So why run again? Why run again? You said it was prejudice. You said you did very well, and you got them to split the ticket first time ever. Obviously, you made a showing.
Yeah.
But there was also some difficulties, some lack of respect of your expertise in activism, and lack of support. Why run again?
I'm running again because the people still need a spokesman. They truly need a representative and someone that are aware of the issues that are affecting them the most, you know, and someone that isn't part of the establishment. You know, they really are sick of career politicians, and they're sick of them being people that get into office and say one thing and do another. And I knew off the bat that's exactly what a person like Gavin Newsom was going to do, just seeing his role as lieutenant governor, as mayor of San Francisco, you know, because I did travel, and going up and down through the state, I saw different trends happening again with homelessness, with open drug use, with human trafficking, you know. It was definitely happening. And if you can pay attention to it, then of course you find a better way to solve the issue. But they could care less about it. They campaign on wanting to solve these problems, but then once they get into office, do nothing about it. So, like I said, I knew the same thing was going to happen with Gavin Newsom, seeing him as mayor and lieutenant governor, and I knew he was being primed to run for governor. And so when he announced that he was going to run, that's when I'm like, I got to run against him, you know?
You already decided to run again for governor when Newsom just announced that he was running for governor.
Oh, yeah, even before. After Jerry Brown, I knew Newsom was next in line. And I'm like, I can't have that. And I wanted to start early because election years come around quickly, especially gubernatorial ones, because they pivot right off of presidential races, which everybody invests all of their attention into. So they pay attention to the presidential race, but 2 fucking years later, we end up picking a new governor who pretty much is the president of our state that we live in. So if we look at what's happening in our own state and local problems, not what the federal government can do or handles, then we should be wanting to hold our local officials accountable more than anybody, you know, and make sure that they're the representatives that we want to have representing us. That's why they're called representatives, you know, and if they don't reflect your needs and wants as a community, there isn't any need for them to serve that role whatsoever. So, yeah, I'm like, I got to run against Newsom. And I ran against him as a libertarian. And I know that, of course, he's going to be running for a second term in 2022. So this time I'm running against him again. Only now I'm going to be running as a Republican, you know, only by name, because the Republican Party in California doesn't exist either. You find out that about these major political parties is they aren't really involved like they make it seem like, you know? And they jump on board a local issue when it benefits them versus always being consistent. So that's why if you look at my political record, whether it was the first time when I ran as an independent, the second time when I ran as a libertarian versus now as a Republican, I offer consistency. The same issues that I was proposing to deal with back then, I'm still arguing for now and advocating for it to resolve, you know, homelessness, hunger, all of these real issues, taxes, one of the first main things. is our money. And you think people would care about that, but we trust these politicians to do the right thing with our money, and they don't. It's other people's money, and they're not going to be responsible in doing so because they're they're not being held accountable. So they can spend, misspend, and people don't fault them for it. They say, oh, they make mistakes, even though they, you know, you hear about reports of them embezzling money or going on expensive trips and buying furniture, that people couldn't afford, or going out to dinner to fancy restaurants like what the governor is doing now, to places that people can't afford to even go. And it's extremely hypocritical. So I'm running on principle, and I'm running on the people's side to get somebody up there that's actually going to speak up for us as a whole and what we want. So I look at myself as being the people's candidate, and the people that end up learning more about me see me as that as well, and I end up getting pledges of support from them. So I'm very happy to have earned that reputation where it matters the most. And those are the people that's going to end up shifting the tides here in California. So if another Republican were to get elected, someone like me would be beneficial to the Republican Party. If they wanted to really get a Republican elected. So hopefully they'll see the trend, and and like I do, and will stand behind me. But if not, I'm still gonna press on forward without them, and I'm going to make it happen because I know the way the election system works. And if I end up getting the majority of votes in the primary as a Republican candidate, they're going to have to get behind me if there's any runoff. So with this special election, it's pretty much any man's game. They can pick whoever they want, but whoever is the winner ends up taking over office. So I'm running as a Republican against Gavin Newsom. Hopefully I can unseat him this time around in this special election, if not in 2022.